Hey, how's it going, everybody? What if Germany won World War One, Part One? Now, that was a lot of W's. Um, the world would be very different. Let's put it that way. Even if you only know a little about history, I can certainly tell that if Germany had actually won World War One, good question if they would have ever even been in World War Two. Most likely, but it would have looked very, very different. Now, World War One was a big topic in German history class. That's where I'm from. I'm from Germany. 21-year-old guy, and yeah, let's just find out what this guy has to say.
Johnny, get your gun, get your gun, get
all
your
this
gun.
footage.
Take it on the run, on the run, on the run. Hear them calling you and me, every son of liberty.
Wow, old footage, really, really old footage, and you hear the sound in the back. Victory of the Kaiser. If that had happened.
World War I was called the war to end all wars. Europe was
Great
now at a new
War.
age, a crisis, where tradition and the modern day were increasingly at odds. Industrialization progressed faster than the mentality did. The old noble ways of gentleman war clashed with the brutal reality of the trenches, and because of this, millions died. World War I was the war to end them all, because this was the last time the old European ideals would fight,
Yep.
the last time monarchies would reign. From who won and lost, new ideas replaced them for this industrial world, like fascism and communism. Simply put, it set the stage for the next. Germany in our timeline brought Russia into civil war, caused immunity in France, and almost broke the Allies in 1917. Before you know, America. It was just by bad decisions that we saw a 20th century of American ascendance, when it easily could have become the German century.
Yep.
Only question is, what would this look like? What if in an alternate timeline, Germany and the Central Powers won World War I? Let's go back to 1914, with the assassination of Austrian royalty Franz Ferdinand. Ferdinand was dead by the hands of a Serb nationalist, and the dominoes began to fall into place. Treaties certainly forced a lot of countries to declare war for their allies. There is one military decision that Germany made that almost certainly lost them the entire war: invading Belgium. France had built up their military border in anticipation for a German attack. Germany, however, had a plan. The Schlieffen Plan, bypassed the French defenses on the
Through
border by
Belgium.
invading through Belgium, which was undefended. By going around this meat grinder, the
This was covered quite a lot. The Schlieffenbahn was a big, big part of German history class.
Germans would have easy access to Paris. Well, that's not so bad. Belgium's tiny. They can't defend themselves. But Germany ignored that Belgium had one key friend: the British. And the British had one single condition that it stressed shouldn't be violated: don't violate Belgian neutrality. Germany, in a Prussian fashion, believed more in military action than diplomatic consequences, and marched anyway. It was this single act that brought on the wrath of the British Empire, redefining the absolute scale this war would be fought on. The British would block German ports and cut the transatlantic cable between the United States and Germany. In this alternate timeline, for Germany to not lose the war, one major step is it simply doesn't invade Belgium. By doing this, Germany avoids immediate conflict with Britain. Now, this doesn't guarantee the Brits would stay out of it. Keep in mind a Central Power victory would cement German dominance in Europe, and we can't have that. But without a provocation, though, this would buy Germany enough time to gain a major advantage over France, even if it was a year before Britain entered. It was 4 years of trench warfare between the British and French combined against Germany alone. France alone wouldn't even have the population to sustain a German offensive. So in this alternate timeline, Germany's military keeps France at bay through a small border they share at Alsace-Lorraine, while the majority of their forces fully
Alsace-Lorraine was one of those places that Germany wanted back, especially, I'm pretty sure, Elsass-Lothringen in German.
mobilized against Russia, aiding their Austrian allies. Whether or not this alternate strategy would work, who knows, but it does solve the whole keep Britain out of the war thing. No matter what German military strategy is, resentment is still assured against the Tsar. Revolution can still undermine the Russian war effort like in our timeline, and force the Russians to negotiate. I'll focus on this aspect in a bit. The German forces on the Eastern Front now come to the west. millions of troops fighting in a small area until one side finally breaks. And without Britain, that side is most likely France. Germany then invades. In our timeline, Germany almost destroyed the French defense in 1917, before the Americans arrived. So it wouldn't be long before the French simply can't defend themselves and are pushed back. Soon, Paris falls. The war in the West and the East is officially over. Both sides tried to fight Germany and lost. Would Britain just sit back and allow Germany to beat two nations in a war, achieving complete dominance over mainland Europe? Probably not. They'd declare war. It's unlikely, however, that they'd win. As the British were the masters of the sea, the Germans were the dominant military of the land. It's doubtful Britain alone could put a dent in the German occupation. America would simply stay out of the war. In exchange for a ceasefire, an agreement is made very similar to the Treaty of Brest-Litovsk. It just
Would be difficult, and for the British to invade Germany, they would have either had to go from north, which is, close to Denmark, or go through a small part of Germany, obviously, or go through Netherlands or neutral Belgium.
one signing of a document, Germany and Austria-Hungary seized Poland, the Baltic states, Belarus, and all of the Ukraine and Crimea. By 1918, most of Europe is now either a Germanic puppet or in the Empire. Why would they do this? Germany feared Russian dominance. Russia for centuries was this backwater European wannabe. It had size and manpower, but was woefully poor and far behind technologically. In the last few decades, something changed. It began industrializing rapidly, and if Russia fully industrialized, there was no defeating them. By seizing their valuable
But the whole industrialization was really a key turning point for Russia in general. Especially towards the end of the First World War. In case you haven't seen our oversimplified video about the Russian Revolution, we found out how incredible, problematic the situation for the Russians were in 1917-18, so towards the end.
Valuable lands, diplomatically by military agreement, Germany legally can neuter the Russian state. Quarter of their population, now German. Most of their coal, now German. But this is just the beginning. If there's one thing Slavs don't like, it's being invaded and occupied. So the 2 million German troops in the east now face a guerrilla war against insurgents, including ones funded by the Soviets. France is blamed for putting the worst of the reparations on Germany, but it's not like Germany would be so kind if they were in the same position. In this alternate timeline, Germany keeps Alsace-Lorraine. They impose massive amounts of war reparations, and the French people have to deal with a brief German occupation. Imagine France at this time.
It needed to be either one, either Germany would have been neutralized or France. That's the thing. I don't believe, and I have to say that I don't think Germany would have been too nice to France. And even if they were in the beginning, later on, if someone like Hitler would have rose anyway, they wouldn't have been too nice to France. Let's be real. No way. They would have used it like a puppet, like every other.
They had lost 2 wars now to the new German Empire, basically powerless to stop a state that was practically brand new. It's not hard to imagine elements of French society would be resentful against the Germans. Does this mean we'll have an alternate French Hitler? Probably not. Even if France actually did have a French Hitler, they just don't have the population to win a war.
Yeah.
World War I was defining for one reason. It set the stage for who the winners and losers would be in the 20th century. Not just in terms of borders, but ideology. Old European aristocratic ways died with the Kaiser and the Austrian Emperor. Don't think Germany and Austria expand monarchies to France or make the king a new power in Britain, but they do send a message that old European aristocracy and nobility is still relevant. It's very possible that the 20th century could have become the German century. The Germans wanted an economic union that united all people of Europe around Germany. Without the rise of the Nazis, intellectuals, including people like Albert Einstein, continued their scientific endeavors inside Germany. However, we're just getting started. The Central Powers have established themselves as victors in this war. What matters is how they...
That's a good point. Many people can argue that especially with the Jews, when Hitler kicked out the Jews, or at least, told them to get out, many scientists have left. There was a lot of potential just lost right there. And imagine Germany would have been able to keep them. Now, obviously, they would have punished them as well, just like with France. But they could have had the knowledge, and could have used that to gain even more influence and even more of an upper hand, towards other countries.
use this victory.
Especially because a World War II would have happened anyway, let's be real.
This, however, is one scenario. This is Cody of Alternate History Hub.
Yeah, I appreciate it. Appreciate it, Cody. Good video. I like that. I'm not even going to say much. I said most in the video. We're definitely going to get right into part 2. And yeah, it's a big if. Even in German history class, we discussed about that. We talked about this. That's for real. Yeah, let me know how much you actually had these. How much did you guys? And tell me where you're from. When you do write a comment, how much did you play with what if scenarios when you were in school? Very curious. Other than that, like, comment, and subscribe. And yeah, any recommendations on what I should react to next? Definitely write in the comments. Appreciate you guys, and we're almost at 350 subscribers. This is incredible. Hope you have a good one.